What's up, my sweet sugar bushes? Some of you are probably wondering why it does not say crime and cosmetics in the title. That is because we are going to go back to our roots and do an old-fashioned true crime, because this case in particular is so long and information dense that I couldn't possibly fathom a look to do that would take up I have 8 pages of notes. That's how long this is. 8 pages, and it's not just like little quips here and there. It's like dense notes that we have to get through. So it's one of the most well-documented shootings in American history, and at the time, it was the deadliest shooting in American history. And of course, we're talking about the Columbine High School shooting that was enacted. That was done by Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold on April 20th in 1999. So like I said, there is so much information out there on this case that we possibly cannot cover it all in this one video. We're going to cover a lot of it, but there's a lot of stuff you should do on your own, research on your own. I'll be showing pictures of the school, of the incident, stuff like that. I'm not going to make it too graphic. There's going to be a 911 call that we're going to listen to from inside the library where a lot of the killing took place. This 911 call was before that, though, so it's not going to be too graphic. Hold on, where Chief feels the need to get back inside that box because I'm talking. Go ahead, get up in there. Go on. Oh, she's gonna get on top of it this time, changing it up. You only get up there when I'm here talking. I don't understand what you think I'm doing when I'm up here, but you see that it's important to me and you're like, I gotta make as much noise as possible. Isn't that right? And you're off. Okay. But anyways, we'll be showing some pictures and stuff like that. I'm not going to make them too graphic at all. You know, when I was younger, I used to be able to see people die on the internet and be A-okay, but now it's not so much like that anymore. There are graphic pictures out there that you can find. A lot of people already know about this case. This case is pretty common knowledge. You do know that the shooters took their own lives at the end of their killing spree. You can find photos of that online. I am not going to link them, and I am not going to put them there. You can go find them yourself. It's not hard to find. I saw them last night, and I was like, after that, you know, I'd been up all day. As some of you know, you were at the Twitch stream. I'd been up all day, and I was researching this case, and I looked at the pictures of them after they Baja blasted their brains out, and I was like, man, as a kid, me looking at this, I'd have been like, whoa, this is so cool. Like, you know, being curious with stuff like that. But as an adult now, I'm just like, fuck, bro, that's rough to see. But whatever, let's get started so we can get through this case. So Tuesday morning, April 20th, 1999. I just spit all over the place. If you saw that, you're welcome. The two individuals placed duffel bags. They arrived at school separately in separate vehicles. They then placed duffel bags inside of the cafeteria that are filled with propane bombs that are set to detonate at 11:17 a.m. Now, the reasoning for this time is because they believe, because 11:17 is the lunch period, and they believe that is the time that most individuals will be inside of the commons. So you'll hear the word commons referred to a lot, and that is actually just the cafeteria. But they believe that it will be the time where majority of people will be in the commons area. So in a field about 3 miles away from Columbine High School, the boys set bags full of small propane bombs, pipe bombs, and aerosol cans in this random field. It's about, like I said, about 3 miles away from Columbine High School. They set it to go off at 11:14 a.m. Essentially what these things are that they're making are IEDs. That's what they are. I'm going to call them that because it's easier, you know. You feel me? But they set this IED in this field. They set it to go off at 11:14. This is supposed to be a diversion, so firefighters and EMS will be occupied with this fire, that when they start their massacre at Columbine High School, you know, it's going to take a minute for them, you know, for police, fire, and stuff like that response to get there, because they had, you know, they're planning to burn and blow up the school with these bombs and stuff like that. Only one of the pipe bombs and aerosol cans detonated, though, and the fire department that was close by would just put it out with a fire extinguisher. I'm like, cool. So at 11:10 a.m., Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, they both arrived to school in separate vehicles. One of them parks in the junior parking lot. The other one parks in the senior parking lot. Both their vehicles are rigged with booby-trapped IEDs to detonate at 12 p.m. I'm sorry. So from where they were, they could see through the cafeteria. They were around the west entrance. They could see through the cafeteria. They could see the windows. I keep spitting all over the place. They could see through these long windows in the cafeteria because that's essentially what they wanted. They wanted to watch the bombs go off, and then they had planned to shoot people as they were running out of the cafeteria. Right above the cafeteria on the second floor of the high school is the library. So as Harris pulls into the parking lot, a student by the name of Brooks Brown is in the parking lot smoking a cigarette, and he sees Harris pull up, and he's like, I'm gonna go talk to him. Harris and Brooks had disputes in the past. They had not been friends, but they recently just patched things up with each other. But Brooks walks up and he's like, hey man, like, you missed this test earlier today, which is not something that Harris does. He doesn't miss school. So when Harris wasn't in school, Brooks was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, we're so close to graduating, and you're gonna sit here and blow it all, blah, blah, blah. But he was getting into it. Brooks will tell you, if you watch interviews, he's like, I was cursing at him and I was yelling at him. I don't know why he didn't shoot me right there. But Harris looks at Brooks and says, it doesn't matter anymore. And Brooks is like, what the fuck are you talking about? And Harris looks at him and says, Brooks, I like you now. Go home. Get out of here. Brooks felt very uneasy about this comment that Harris made, and so I think he had also planned on skipping his next class anyway, so he was just like, all right, I'm gonna deuce out of here, and left the school grounds. So after Brooks leaves, the two get out of their vehicles and they begin arming themselves. So the two were also wearing trench coats. They were technically dusters. A lot of people, this was speculated to be because of the school's trench coat mafia. That's not true. Derek or Klebold and Harris were not. Can I help you, ma'am? You only act up like this whenever I'm filming. I don't know. I wish I could talk to my cats. Because they're like, what do you think I'm doing up here that you're just like, I'm going to make as much noise as possible? You done? Okay. Not yet? Okay. So as I was saying, there was a lot of speculation that they wore what they wore because, they were part of the school's trench coat mafia. That's not true. They wore these trench coats, they wore these dusters because they could easily conceal the weapons that they were carrying. And I mean, honestly, like, you look at any like villain movie where it's like a gunslinger or whatever, he's always got a trench coat on. They got a lot, they were super into natural born killers as well, so it was really just for functionality of being able to conceal their weapons. So Harris arms himself with a Hi-Point 995 carbine with 13 10-round magazines and a Savage Springfield 67H pump-action shotgun. Klebold uses a Tech 9 semi-automatic handgun carrying one 52-round magazine, one 32-round magazine, and one 28-round magazine. He's also carrying a Stevens 311D double-barrel shotgun. And prior to this, both boys had sawed the barrels off of their shotgun as well. They were both carrying backpacks and duffel bags that were full of ammunition and pipe bombs. Harris wore a white t-shirt that said Natural Selection in big black letters across it. Klebold wore a black t-shirt that said Wrath in big red letters across it. So thankfully, the cafeteria IEDs did not explode. This saved the lives of around 488 children. But at 11:19 a.m. the shooting begins. Again, a lot of this is graphic. These children, what they were children. They were killed without mercy. They were killed for no reason, and they were killed for fun. So just a heads up as we go along with this. It's going to be graphic. The 911 call, while in nature, is not too graphic, but it's still hard to hear. So 17-year-old Rachel Scott and her friend Richard Castaldo were having lunch on the grass next to the west entrance of the school. So Klebold throws a pipe bomb towards the parking lot, and the bomb only partially detonates, giving off a big plume of smoke. So Castaldo had thought that this was a senior prank, along with a lot of other students who saw it happen. They thought this was a senior prank, someone coming into a school with weapons to harm kids is not, it's not heard of around this time. Compared to today, if you see anybody remotely being suspicious around a school, you've got an entire police force on them. This was not the case back then. This was unheard of. So witnesses report hearing the words "go, go" screamed before Harris and Claybold pulled their guns from their trench coats and started shooting. Rachel Scott was hit 4 times with rounds fired from Harris's carbine, one striking her in the left temple and killing her instantly. Castaldo was shot 8 times in the chest, arms, and abdomen. He miraculously survived, but he is paralyzed from the chest down. So Harris then aims his carbine at the west staircase in the direction of students Daniel Robo, Sean Graves, and Lance Kirkland. And at first, these students, they thought they were holding paintball guns. Like, that's how unheard of this was for this time, that they believed that these individuals had paintball guns because the idea of someone, especially another student, bringing a gun to school and, you know, nonetheless killing some, like, individuals, it was not heard of. It was not, for this time, no, it just didn't happen. So Harris is aiming this carbine at them. They, like I said, they think it's paintball guns, so they're about to walk back up the stairs and just kind of like get out of the line of fire so they don't get hit with paintballs. When Harris begins firing his carbine and kills Robo and injures the 2 other students. So Dave Sanders was a teacher at Columbine. He was also a motherfucking hero. He's in the cafeteria. He hears these sounds and he knows immediately what's happening. He knows they are gunshots. So he starts taking kids from the cafeteria, putting them in empty rooms, telling them to get under tables, moving them up the staircase to the 2nd story of the building, doing whatever he can to, you know, get these kids out of the way, out of the line of fire, and help them escape. He saved tons of lives that day. So, meanwhile, the shooters are still outside. They begin shooting towards a group of 5 students who were sitting close by on a grassy hillside, kind of adjacent to the steps. Michael Johnson was shot in the face, leg, and arms, but manages to escape miraculously. Mark Taylor was shot in the chest, arms, and legs, and he fell to the ground and began faking his death so they would stop firing at him. The other students managed to escape. So Claybold is walking towards the cafeteria entrance when he comes up to Lance Kirkland, who had been injured previously. Lance was calling for help, and Claybold looks at him and says, "Sure, I'll help you," before shooting Kirkland in the face at point-blank range with his shotgun, in which Kirkland would survive this shotgun blast. I don't know, I don't think, you know, I'm not sure if any of you that watch these videos are avid shooters of guns. I grew up around guns. I've been shooting guns since I was like 5 years old. I was in the military. If you've ever seen what a shotgun blast does to somebody up close, now it depends on what kind of rounds you have in. You know, they make tons of different kinds of rounds for shotguns. I'm going to assume that these kids had like double-aught buck or something. A shotgun blast at close range is devastating, you know. With a regular, let me try to put this in perspective. With a regular bullet, so let's say a 9mm round from Claybold's Tech 9 or Harris's carbine, you have a, you know what? I'll just show you. Hold on. So this is a 9mm critical defense round that I use in my everyday carry, 9mm. So if you're unaware how a round or a bullet works, essentially this brass part right here is what's flying through the air. In here, so you have your primer on the back. What happens is the firing pin inside of the weapon strikes this primer. This primer causes a reaction inside the shell. The gas and gunpowder inside the shell expand, which is what ejects the bullet from the barrel. It's like if you were to throw one of these in a fire, it would just pop. It wouldn't go anywhere because it needs direction. With the 9mm, say, you know, they won't have the same rounds as this, obviously, but with the Tech 9 or the carbine, this is what is striking students, this just brassy area. Now with the shotgun, on the other hand, so I was just looking through my ammo stash. I have a bunch of 9mm. This is probably more of what they were using. This is a full metal jacket. Now with the shotgun though, now these are target load rounds, but that's about what it looks like inside. There are tons of smaller BBs. They weren't using this type of ammunition, but you can see through this type of ammunition to kind of give you an idea of the rounds that were being fired at these students. If you can see inside there and you see all those metal balls, think that, but a lot smaller. Again, I couldn't find anything that tells me what kind of ammunition that they were using with shotguns. I'm going to go ahead and assume it was either buckshot or birdshot. The only difference is buckshot, you're going to have these depending on what kind of buckshot it is. This is double-aught buck. Birdshot, the BBs are much smaller. Double-aught buck, they're going to be larger like this right here. And with number 4 buckshot, they're going to be smaller than this, but not as small as the birdshot. I'll put up some pictures to give you an idea of what is flying at these students. And then, of course, with shotguns, you have slug rounds, but they weren't using slug rounds. They were using regular, just shotgun rounds. And if any of you are into guns and ammo, this is the shell casing of a 50 cal round I snagged when I was in the Army. And this bad Larry is a Mark 19 training round. If you don't know what a Mark 19 is, it's a fully automatic grenade launcher, and it is fun as hell to shoot. It just jams all the time. But this is a training round full of dye, not an HE round, because that would be unsafe. Unsafe to have in your home, but it's a 40 millimeter practice round. These things are fun to throw on the ground because they go poof in orange smoke. Anyways, back to the story. Sorry, I'm getting off track. So after Claybold shoots Kirkland in the face, Sean Graves, who is paralyzed from the waist down from his wounds, he has rubbed blood all over his face and played dead so they wouldn't, you know, actually kill him. Claybold steps over him and is like, it says, quote unquote, "Sorry, dude," and walks into the cafeteria. So Claybold was only in the cafeteria for a short period of time. Speculation is that he went in to see to check on the propane bombs that they had left in the cafeteria. He walks in and he just goes to make sure, you know, they actually didn't go off or they just didn't hear him. And he doesn't shoot at anybody that's still in the cafeteria. And then he walks out back outside. While Claybold is checking on the propane bombs, Harris is on top of the stairs, the west staircase that I was talking about earlier, and he is firing his carbine. He severely wounds and paralyzes 17-year-old. And if I pronounce some of these last names wrong, I do apologize. I don't want to just say a first name or last names. I feel like individuals involved in this, out of respect, deserve to have their full name said for what they went through. So Claybold soon joins Harris on the stairs. They're shooting at some kids that were down by a soccer field. They miss all their shots, though, and don't hit anybody. So they start walking towards the west entrance of the school. They're throwing pipe bombs, you know, in random directions and stuff like that. Witnesses said that they could hear them say, you know, "This is what we've always wanted to do. This is awesome." So our teacher, Patty Nilsson, from inside the school, she hears all this going on outside. She doesn't know what it is. Again, you know, back in this time, when you hear things like this, your first reaction isn't, "Oh, someone's shooting up the school." Now the world we live in now, a little bit different. But Miss Nielsen did not, you know what was going on. She thought it was a senior prank happening because it was near the end of the school year, or some students shooting a video or a movie or something like that. She intended to walk outside and tell the students to knock it off. Those were her words as well. She was going to go out there and tell them to knock it off. Along with her is student Brian Anderson. So as Anderson attempts to open the first set of double doors that lead outside, Claybold and Harris end up start shooting out the windows that are the window panes that are inside the doors. This causes glass shards to fly over the place and injure Anderson, and Miss Nielsen was hit in the shoulder with shrapnel. So after that, Anderson and Miss Nielsen, they end up running down the hallway and to the library. Miss Nielsen alerts the students inside the library of what is happening outside. This is when she starts instructing them to hide under desks, you know, get down, things of that nature. She then calls 911. And this is some of the audio from that 911 call.
Jefferson County 911.
Yes, I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun. He has shot out a window. I believe one I've been
Columbine High School.
I don't know what's in my shoulder. If it was just the last beat or what.
Okay, has anybody been injured, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the school is in a panic. And I'm in the library. I've got students down under the table, kids. Heads under the table. Kids are screaming. Some of the teachers are are, trying to take control of things. We need police here.
Okay, we're getting them there.
Police here.
Who is the student, ma'am?
I do not know who the student is.
Okay.
I saw a student outside. I was in hall duty. Oh, dear God. Okay. I was on hall duty. I saw a gun. I said, what's going on out there? And he said, oh, it's probably for video production. It's probably a joke. I said, well, I don't think that's a good idea. And I went walking outside. I could see his dance. See what was going on. He turned the gun straight at us and shot. And my God, the window went out. And the kid standing there with me, I think he got hit.
Okay.
Something in my shoulder.
Okay. We've got help on the way, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, God.
Stay on the line with me.
Oh, God. Hey, just stay down.
Do we know where he's at?
I'm sorry?
Do we know where he's at?
Okay. I'm in the library. He's upstairs. He's right outside of here.
He's outside?
He's outside of this hall.
Outside of a hall or outside?
This hall.
Okay.
There are alarms and things going off now. Smoke. My God, smoke is like coming into this room.
Okay.
I've got the kids under the table here. I don't know what's happening in the rest of the building. We've also got smoke in the building. I don't know. I'm sure someone has to be calling 911 beside
Yes, we've got a lot of people on. Okay. I just want you to stay in the line with me. We need to know what's going on.
Okay.
Okay?
I am on the floor.
Okay. And you've got the kids
in the
there?
library, and I've got every student in this library on the floor. You better stay on the floor.
Is there any way you can lock the doors?
Smoke is coming in from out there, and I'm a little afraid. The gun is right outside the library door, okay? I don't think I'm going to go out there. Okay, you're at Columbine High School? I got 3 children.
Okay, we got it.
Okay? I'm not going to go to the door to shut the door, okay? I've got the kids on the floor. I got all the kids in the library on the floor.
We have paramedics, we have fire, and we have police en route, okay, sir?
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
I don't know. I can't believe he's not out of bullets. He just keeps shooting and shooting and shooting.
Okay, yeah, we've got a police officer on scene.
I thought it was.
Okay, just try and keep the kids in the library calm.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can block the door so no one can get in?
I do not.
Okay.
I guess I can try to go, but he's right outside that door. I'm afraid to go to the door.
That's okay.
That's where he is. I'm afraid to go there. Okay?
That's okay.
Okay, I told the kids to get on the floor. I told them to get under the table. All of the children are on the floor under the table. They're all under the tables.
Okay.
And
as long as we can just try and keep...
No one's saying a word.
Okay, as long as we can keep everyone there as calm as we can.
I hear some yelling out there going on right now.
Yeah, we've got alarms going off now as well.
Yeah, there's alarms. This room is filled with smoke.
Okay.
Okay.
Keep everyone low to the floor.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's up. Okay. Everyone stay on the floor. Stay on the floor. Stay under the table.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, I know, just...
I don't know. I didn't... I said, what is that kid got? He was outside at the time. And I was on call duty. Oh, God. He's trying, he's like, woo, woo, woo.
I know.
Things are being shut off. I do not know who the student was. I don't even think I saw him. He was wearing black. He didn't look very large. Male student. He was out there shooting. It looked like he was climbing out and shooting. And somebody, I said, what is that? I said, what's going on out there? This Wirecap gun. It's probably for video production. You know, they do these video productions. And the kids, I said, well, that's not, a play gun, a real gun. I was going out there to say no. And I went, oh my God, that was really close. That rattled me.
Okay. What's your name, ma'am?
My name is
Patty?
Patty. He's yelling everybody get up right now. He's in the library. He's saying everybody get up right now.
Okay.
He's in the library. I have him in the library shooting at students to the lady that I have in the library on the phone.
Okay, try and keep as many people down as we can. Okay. Do you know who he is? Okay. I think I'll need
11:22 a.m. A custodian calls Deputy Neil Gardner, who was the school's resource officer, who had been having lunch in his patrol car. Now, usually Deputy Gardner would have lunch with the students in the cafeteria, but for some reason this day, he was having lunch in his patrol car. So he hears this call on the school's radio, the custodian saying he needs assistance in the senior parking lot. So then literally a minute later at 11:23 a.m., he hears on his police radio that they have a female down. Now he assumes that she was hit by a car and begins heading in that direction. So he gets to the senior lot. It takes him less than a minute. At 11:24 a.m., he's exiting his vehicle at the in the senior lot when he gets another call on the school radio. The custodian again saying, "Neil, there's a shooter in the school." So Harris, who is still at the west entrance of the school, they haven't gone inside yet. He turns around and he sees Deputy Gardner in the parking lot. And when he sees him, he immediately fires 10 rounds in his direction from his carbine. This causes the deputy to take cover as Harris is reloading his weapon, because he only has 10-round magazines. The deputy returns fire. Harris gets down. He's not hit, but it took Harris a minute to get back up and shoot again. So Deputy Gardner believed that he had hit Harris, but he was wrong. So as Harris is firing at the deputy for the second time, he retreats inside the building. Deputy Gardner then reports on his police radio, quote unquote, "Shots in the building, I need someone in the south lot with me." So at this point in the shooting, Harris had fired his weapons around 47 times, and Claybold had only fired his weapons around 5. So nearby, deputies Paul Smoker and Paul Major were 2 motorcycle policemen. They were writing a ticket a couple miles away from the school when they hear this call on the radio. They begin making their way to the school. Their quickest route is that they are cutting through athletic fields to get there. While on their way, they see 3 other deputies following them in a patrol car. They then abandon their motorcycles and get in the patrol car for extra safety. So once the deputies reach the school, they begin assisting with evacuating wounded students, getting them to safety. Around this time, at 11:26 a.m., Harris walks back to the double doors and begins firing his weapon at the officers. Deputy Gardner once more returned fire, and Deputy Smoker also began returning fire with a service pistol. This caused Harris to retreat back into the building. So as the 2 gunmen are walking through the main hallways, Dave Sanders and 2 custodians, John Curtis and Jay Galatine, they are assisting students in getting them to safety. They're moving them from up the staircases to the second floor of the building. As I said before, Dave Sanders is a hero. As well as the 2 other custodians, John Curtis and Jay Galatine, they're putting, they see what's happening, they know what's going on, and instead of saving themselves and running out of the building, their first thought is we need to save as many of these kids as possible and make sure they're not in harm's way. Absolute fucking heroes. So as Dave Sanders is upstairs after he's gotten most of the students up there, I cannot reiterate enough that these men are heroes, but while he's upstairs, Dave Sanders is at the end of the hallway with another student. So Dave Sanders is upstairs in the main hallway with another student when they encountered the 2 shooters. Both Sanders and the student he was with attempted to flee when Harris and Claybold began shooting at them. 2 of the rounds hit Mr. Sanders, hitting him in the back and the neck. 1 round actually hitting his teeth as it exited his body. And the student he was with managed to not get hit at all, thankfully. So the student had ran into one of the science rooms and warned everybody inside to run and hide. Claybold walks over to Sanders, doesn't execute him or anything, but he throws a pipe bomb somewhere, and then he goes and rejoins Harris in the library hallway. So as the shooters walked away, Mr. Sanders began struggling to get into the science area. A teacher actually ended up taking him into a classroom where 30 other students were located. Now, also, keep in mind that Columbine was a big school. I think at the time it had around 2,000 kids. This was absolute chaos. So as soon as that teacher brings Mr. Sanders into the classroom, student Aaron Hansey springs into action immediately. And he begins using his first aid knowledge to try and administer aid to Mr. Sanders with the assistance of a fellow student, Kevin Starkey, and teacher Teresa Miller. So they administer aid to Mr. Sanders for 3 hours. They're using the t-shirts of other students in the room to attempt to stop or slow the bleeding of Mr. Sanders' wounds. If you don't know, hemorrhaging, you can die from hemorrhaging in as little as 5 minutes. Also, Starkey is showing Mr. Sanders pictures in his wallet to keep him alive and talking so he doesn't, go unconscious and pass away. And using the telephone in the room, Miller and the students kept in contact with police as best as they could. But these kids, to have that initial reaction as soon as you see someone wounded, to be like, let's administer aid to him, and just spring into action. These kids are fucking heroes. 11:29 a.m. is when the library massacre takes place. Here in the library is where a majority of students lost their lives. The two shooters enter the library at 11:29 a.m., where 52 students, 2 teachers, and 2 librarians are hiding. After the gunmen enter the library, they walk to 2 rows of computers. Sitting at the north row was student Kyle Velasquez. Velasquez had suffered a stroke at a very young age, which left him disabled. And I saw some conflicting things. Some things he said he was just, he was hiding under the desk, but majority of what I've seen says that he may have not been able to comprehend what was happening or what was going on around him, or he might have been too frightened to hide, so he just stayed sitting at the computer that he was at, which was something he regularly did. He really loved computers and was really into the military. But as the gunman walked over to him, he was just sitting there, and Claybold walks over to him and shoots him in the head at point-blank range with his shotgun. The two then go and reload their weapons before continuing around the library. So witness had stated that they heard the boys talking about how long they had wanted to do this. They would say like Yahoo when they fired their weapons at a random object and stuff like that. Just like seemed to genuinely be enjoying themselves. They then ordered jocks to stand up, and anyone with a sports emblem or a white ball cap on to stand up. Apparently it was a tradition among athletes in the school to wear white ball caps, but of course nobody did this. Nobody stood up. They were too scared. And then for a brief moment, the two walk over to the library windows and begin firing at police that were stationed in the parking lot, and then retreated back further into the library when police returned fire. This was another big thing. There were police on scene, but none of them entered the building. This was majorly scrutinized by media and, the American people as to why the police didn't go in when they were on the scene and continued to let these gunmen walk around the school killing people. So Harris begins walking towards the lower row of computer desks, getting down on one knee and firing his shotgun under one of the desks. He hit 14-year-old Stephen Kernow with a fatal wound to the neck. Stephen was actually the youngest individual to die in the massacre. The shotgun blast also injured 17-year-old Casey Ruckseger. One round passing clean through her shoulder, another grazing her neck and hitting a major artery. When she began gasping in pain, Harris looked at her and said, "Quit your bitching." So Harris then walks to another desk where Cassie Bernal and Emily Wyant were hiding. He kneels down on one knee after slapping the top of the desk and looks under the desk at them and yells, "Peekaboo," before shooting Bernal once in the head with his shotgun, killing her instantly. He was firing this at this time with one hand, and again he had a sawed-off shotgun. Shotguns have a bit of a kick to them, especially if these are kids, by the way. They were 18 and 17 years old, so the recoil from his shotgun ends up causing the weapon to fly backwards and hit him in the nose, injuring him, giving him a bloody nose and blood around his mouth. He actually tells Claybold that he does this, and Claybold looks at him angry and says, "Well, why'd you do that for?" After fatally shooting Bernal, he moves over to another table where student Bree Pascal had not been hiding under the table. She was actually hiding next to it. Harris had asked Bree if she wanted to die. She began pleading for her life. Harris just laughs at her and responds, "Everyone's going to die." When Claybold told Harris to shoot her, Harris responded with, "No, we're gonna blow up the school anyway," and the two walk off. So Klebold notices Patrick Ireland attempting to administer aid to student Mackay Hall. This was behind a table as well, and while he was attempting to do this, Mackay had accidentally lifted his head up too far, and his head rose above the table, and that's when Klebold shot him a second time. Patrick Ireland was knocked unconscious. Klebold then walks over to another table where he finds 18-year-old student Isaiah Scholes, 16-year-old Matthew Ketchter, and 16-year-old Craig Scott, who was actually Rachel Scott's younger brother. They were hiding beneath it. Klebold then calls out to Harris, telling him that he had found a insert racial slur here with the hard R because Isaiah Scholes was actually an African-American student. Harris walks over and the two attempt to pull Isaiah out from under the table. The two ended up taunting Isaiah for a minute or so, calling him racial slurs and stuff like that, before putting both their guns under the table and firing. Harris shot Isaiah once in the chest, killing him, and Klebold had shot and killed Ketchter. Craig Scott, who is actually uninjured from these blasts, ends up lying in a pool of his friend's blood, feigning death, so they don't kill him as well. Harris then stands up and yells, "Who wants to die next?" before making his way around the library. For a minute, the gunmen begin walking around the library, just shooting at random objects or whatever, causing as much destruction as they possibly could. They end up injuring 17-year-old Mark Kitgen in the process, wounding his head and shoulder. So Harris had turned and shot a table near him, injuring 18-year-olds Lisa Kruitz, Lauren Townsend, and Valine Schnur all within the same shotgun blast. Klebold moves towards the same table and fires several shots with his Tech 9 and ends up killing Townsend. And, as this happens, Valine Schnur starts, crying out, "Oh my God, oh my God." In response, Klebold asks if she believes in the existence of God. When Schnur replied that she did, Klebold asks why, and then comments, "God is gay." Klebold then reloads his weapon and walks away from the table. Harrison approaches the table where two young girls were hiding. He looks at them, says pathetic, gets up and dismisses them and walks away. He moves to another table where he fires his weapon twice, injuring 16-year-olds Nicole Nolan and John Tomlin. Tomlin had actually began moving from under the table, and Klebold shot him multiple times, killing him. Harris then shot and killed 16-year-old Kelly Fleming with his shotgun. He then shoots a table that was behind Kelly Fleming. He hits the already deceased Townsend. He hits Kreutz again and wounds 18-year-old Gina Park. So after reloading their weapons, Harris points his rifle under a table. Now the student hiding under this table moved out of the way, but Harris trained his rifle back onto the student and told him to identify himself. The student he was pointing his weapon at was John Savage, who was actually an acquaintance of Klebold's. John had actually asked Klebold what they were doing, and Klebold just nonchalantly answered, "Killing people." Savage asked Klebold if they were going to kill him. Klebold replied with no and told him to get up and run, and which Savage did. He exited through the library's main entrance. After Savage had left, Harris turned and fired his carbine at a table directly north of where he'd been standing, hitting the ear and hand of 15-year-old Daniel Mauser. Mauser reacted to this by either shoving a chair at Harris or grabbing his leg or something of the sorts, but Harris had fired again at Mauser, hitting him in the face at close range, killing him. Both shooters fired randomly at under another table, injuring two 17-year-olds, Jennifer Doyle and Austin Eubanks, and fatally wounding 17-year-old Corey DePuter. At 11:35 a.m., there were no further victims. They had killed 10 individuals and wounded 12. All of that death and destruction in 6 minutes. It's baffling. So at this point, Klebold is quoted saying that they might start knifing people to conserve ammo, but they never went through with that. Harrison attempts to throw a Molotov cocktail at the other end of the library. It doesn't explode. Him and Klebold end up converging where Todd had moved after he'd been wounded. So Klebold pulls the chair out from under the desk and points his Tech 9 at Todd, who at the time was wearing a white hat. Klebold then asks him if he is a jock. Todd responds with no, Claybold says, well, that's good, you know, quote unquote says, well, that's good, we don't like jocks. Claybold then demanded to see his face. Todd lifts his hat partially to kind of keep his face obscured. When Claybold asks Todd, give me a reason I shouldn't kill you, Todd responds with, I don't want any trouble. Claybold responded back angrily, trouble, you don't even know what trouble is. Todd then tries to correct himself, saying, that's not what I meant. I mean, I don't have a problem with you guys. I never will and I never did. Or I never did and I never will. Claybold then tells Harris that he is going to let Todd live, but Harris is more than welcome to kill him if he wanted to. Luckily, Harris pays little attention to this comment and says, let's go to the commons. And the two begin exiting the library. While they're walking out, Claybold says, oh yeah, one more thing, and picks up a chair near where Miss Nielsen had been hiding and slams it into a computer terminal before leaving. So the two exit the library at 11:36 a.m. Fearing the shooters would return, the 10 injured and the 29 uninjured survivors begin evacuating the library through the emergency exit. Craig Scott actually assisted Casey Rucksager in her escape. This would prove to actually save her life, because if she had stayed in the library longer or was not able to get help when she did, she would have succumbed to her injuries. So after leaving the library, the two go back to the cafeteria for a brief moment. They attempt to detonate the propane bombs they had placed that didn't explode. They tried to shoot at it, throw Molotov cocktails. They ended up causing a partial detonation, but it was quickly extinguished by the school sprinkler system. After walking around for a brief moment, they were firing into classrooms, most of them empty, just firing random stuff without rhyme or reason. They re-entered the library. Now, most of the students had evacuated. Lisa Kreutz, who was still injured, was hiding, and Patrick Ireland, who had been unconscious, was still in the library as well. At around 12:02 p.m., the two gunmen fire at police, and police return fire, who are still in the parking lot, have not entered the building. But by 12:05, all gunfire from inside the school had ceased. At 12:08 p.m., Harris sits down with a bookshelf at his back. He fires his shotgun through the roof of his mouth, taking his own life. Claybold goes down to his knees, places his Tech-9 to his left temple, and squeezes the trigger, taking his own life. Like I said prior, there are pictures of this. I know there was speculation that Harris had shot Claybold before shooting himself, but I'm pretty sure that was disproven. I know partially it was because Harris's shotgun was under his leg in the crime scene photos. You can read more about that. I'm not going to go into that. Like I said, there are photos of this. There are crime scene photos of this. You can see it. All it takes is a quick Google search. I'm not going to show them here. But if you have the stomach for that, by all means, do your research. By noon, SWAT was stationed outside of the school. EMS begins taking wounded students to local hospitals. But at the end of everything, SWAT did not enter the building until 1:09 p.m. and began moving from classroom to classroom, sweeping the entire area. Like, I understand that this was not something that was common. This was practically unheard of for the time. But why have a special weapons and tactic team if not for this exact reason? I don't understand how they were not on the scene sooner. I know information was, the dissemination of information was probably not that great, but you had officers on scene who could relay information. And also the fact, again, this is just my opinion. If you are a police, if you are an officer and you literally are shot at by these individuals that are walking into a school full of children, why aren't you going to go after them? I understand, maybe not go through the same door they went through, go through another entrance and begin entering and clearing the building while backup is on its way. I'm sure that these officers were more well trained with their firearms than this 17 and 18-year-old. It makes you wonder how many lives they could have saved if they had went into the building and attempted to neutralize the threat. But that's neither here nor there. That is just my opinion. This was also a big thing in the media, the police scrutiny. I get it. Again, this was something that was unheard of. So, there wasn't, as far as I saw after my reading, there wasn't really protocol for something like this because no one thought it was going to happen. So the families of students were asked to gather at Leawood Elementary to await further information. Students and faculty inside the school were taken to small holding areas where they were questioned. They were given medical treatment if they needed it, and then they were bused to meet their family members at Leawood Elementary, with some victims' families being told to wait for a final bus that never came. So Patrick Ireland, who was in the library, had regained consciousness finally. Well, he was slipping in and out of consciousness multiple times during the entire ordeal. He finally regains consciousness, and he is paralyzed on his right side, but he manages to crawl over to the library window and pull himself over and on live TV pulls himself out of the window where two SWAT members standing on the roof of an emergency vehicle catch him. I think there was some scrutiny as well because they let him fall, like 7 feet or something like that before they caught him. But, again, I'm just telling you what I saw in the media. But this all happened on live TV. Like I said, he becomes known as the boy in the window. Absolute badass. You're wounded. You're paralyzed on your right side, but you still manage to get up and crawl up to a window. You got injured and went unconscious after trying to administer aid to another person, and pull yourself up out of a window. Absolute badass. At 2:15 p.m., students had placed a sign in the window of one of the classrooms saying, reading, "One bleeding to death," to alert law enforcement of Dave Sanders' location. SWAT arrived at the location at 2:40 p.m. They begin evacuating students. Hansi and Starkey, who had been administering aid to Mr. Sanders, are very, very reluctant to leave him because they've been keeping him alive for the past couple hours. But they believe that Mr. Sanders is going to make it. They have very high hopes that he is going to survive. They've been keeping him alive. They think that, even though they're going to have to leave him, that he's in, emergency service is going to take care of him, and he is going to pull through. So SWAT team moves Mr. Sanders into a nearby storage room, so it's easier for paramedics to, treat him. Students Hansi and Starkey, they have high hopes that Mr. Sanders is going to pull through. Unfortunately, by the time paramedics reach Mr. Sanders, they find that he has no pulse, and he passes away while waiting for paramedics to treat him. He's the only teacher to die during the massacre. Around 3:22 p.m., wounded students are evacuated from the library as well. Bomb squads then begin disarming the mini propane bombs and pipe bombs that were thrown around the school. They also begin disarming the booby-trapped, the IEDs that had booby-trapped the two shooters' vehicles. And those booby traps were designed to detonate the gas tank. Again, they had big plans for this massacre. This wasn't just going to be a school thing they were going to do. They planned on taking this massacre nationwide. So the world is in absolute shock at this. This is the first time something like this has happened. It's unheard of. People cannot believe that something so horrific has happened in our country. President Bill Clinton even addresses it. We'll listen to that clip as well.
I want to begin by saying that Hillary and I are profoundly shocked and saddened by the tragedy today in Littleton, where two students opened fire on their classmates before apparently turning their guns on themselves. I have spoken with Governor Bill Owens and County Commission Chair Patricia Holloway and expressed my profound concern for the people of Littleton. I have spoken to Deputy Attorney General Eric Holder, and who, along with Attorney General Reno, is closely monitoring the situation. I've asked the Attorney General and the Secretary of Education to stand ready to assist local law enforcement, the schools, the families, the entire community during this time of crisis and sorrow. A crisis response team is ready now to travel to Colorado, and I strongly believe that we should do whatever we can to get enough counselors to the families and the children as quickly as possible. I know the other communities that have been through this are also ready to do whatever they can to help. I think that Patricia Holloway would not mind if I said that amidst all the turmoil and grief that she and others are experiencing, she said to me just a moment ago that perhaps now America would wake up to the dimensions of this challenge if it could happen in a place like Littleton.
So memorials were quickly put up. Rachel Scott's and John Tomlin's, Rachel Scott's car and John Tomlin's truck became memorials. A local carpenter had erected 6-foot wooden crosses in a nearby park to symbolize the individuals that had died inside the school. For some reason, there were crosses erected for Harris and Claybold. I don't know if the information that they were the shooters hadn't been released at the time. They just had the names of those who died. I honestly do not know. That seems to be the only logical explanation on why there would be memorials for the two gunmen. But Daniel Robo's father goes and cuts down the crosses that were meant for the gunmen. There were also trees planted in the honor of students who lost their lives in the school. For some reason, again, there were two that were meant for the gunmen, and Daniel Robo's father goes and cuts those down as well, just as he should. I'm not even going to go into the Christian martyrdom that Christian evangelical churches pushed regarding the deaths of Scott and Bernal. They use their deaths as a way to promote themselves and recruit members to their churches. If you can find interviews of people talking about, I remember seeing a TikTok recently that talked about how, they were given pamphlets of these two and how they apparently were asked if they believe in God and they said yes, and then they were killed and stuff like that. I'm not going to go into all that. On a sad note as well, 6 months after the shooting, Anne Marie Hochhalter's mother takes her own life. Greg Barnes, a 17-year-old student who witnessed Sanders being shot, took his own life in May of 2000. Austin Eubanks, one of the survivors who was injured during the shooting, he developed an opioid addiction due to the medication he was prescribed while he was, healing from his injuries. At one point, he had overcame that addiction and spoke publicly about it, but unfortunately, he did succumb to his addiction and died of an accidental overdose in 2019 at the age of 37. So let's talk about the motive. Again, I told you this was going to be it's probably the longest case we've done, but let's go on to the motive of why these two did this. So they had been planning this attack for a long time, for a really, really long time. Both individuals exhibited signs of mental illness. The supervisor in charge of the Columbine investigation, Dr. Dwayne Fuselier, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, would later remark that, "I believe Eric went to the school to kill and didn't care if he died, while Dylan wanted to die and didn't care if others died as well." He describes Harris as being a clinical psychopath and Claybold as being extremely depressed. So both boys had actually had journals that they wrote in pretty regularly. Harris had at one time been writing all of his which was essentially journal entries into a website that he had. He would use that website to write down his thoughts and feelings and stuff like that. But eventually he reverted the website back to what it had originally had been, which was a website for people to upload user-created doom levels, and switched to a physical journal. Claybold, on the other hand, had been writing down his thoughts since March of 1997. Both individuals in the journal expressed their hatred for humanity and hatred for the kids that they went to school with. Claybold, Harris was a lot of his hatred for humanity and such. Claybold wrote a lot about his depression and his self-hate and internal suffering, but both individuals wrote very extensively about their plans to carry out this massacre. Claybold had even wrote a message in Harris's 1998 yearbook that read, "Killing enemies, blowing stuff up, killing cops. My wrath for January's incident will be godlike. Not to mention our revenge in the Commons," which again, Commons was what they called the cafeteria. Both gunmen were also in a video production class in school. They used video equipment from the school to record multiple videos. There's only two of these videos. One, Hitmen for Hire, which essentially is they were asked to create like a product advertisement for school, and that's what they created. And they were essentially it was hitmen for hire, where they would go hunt down jocks and preps in the video with fake guns. And then another one called Rampart Range, which was them at in the woods where they would regularly go and fire weapons, and the weapons they're using in this video are the ones that they would use to enact this massacre. There's part of a third video known as Radioactive Clothing that exists, but like I said, only parts of it. The remaining 3 tapes that are titled the basement tapes, because they were filmed in the Harris family basement, detailed their plans extensively to enact this massacre. They talked about where they hid their guns, how they deceived their parents, what they were going to do. Like I said, very, very detailed descriptions of this massacre, how they felt about the world around them and how they felt about themselves and the people that they encountered. And then at the end of the basement tapes, it was filmed 30 minutes before the massacre. And it's both of the boys basically saying goodbye to their families and that they are sorry to them. Claybolt saying at the end, just know that I'm, quote unquote, just know that I'm going to a better place. I don't like life too much. So only a select few of the families of the victims, as well as a very select few of journalists, were allowed to view these basement tapes. Officials believe that people would use these tapes, if they were released to the public, as a guide to enact future massacres, and that it would inspire future massacres of this caliber. And after those individuals who were allowed to viewed them, they were kept under strict lock and key, but they have since been destroyed completely. If I remember correctly, only some dialogue from the basement tapes and a secretly videotaped small clip from them remains to this day. Both of them heavily idolized Timothy McVeigh, who was the perpetrator in the Oklahoma City bombing. They were both, big into Nazism. They wrote about it in their journals, and I think Harris more so praised them. The attack occurred on April 20th, which was actually Hitler's birthday. There's evidence to suggest that originally they had planned to carry out the attack on April 19th, which was the anniversary date of the Oklahoma City bombing. Bullying and rejection was also highlighted as a cause. They were not very, they were kind of loners. There was that whole speculation they were part of the Trenchcoat Mafia. They were not part of the Trenchcoat Mafia. They had few friends that were in the Trenchcoat Mafia, but they themselves were not part of it. Harris's last journal entry reads, "I hate you people for leaving me out of so many fun things." While Claybolt's journal entry reads, "The lonely man strikes with absolute rage." In an interview, Brooks Brown, the individual that they had talked to before carrying out the massacre that Harris had told to get out of there, described them as the worst outcasts of the school, saying they were the losers of the losers. You can also find a lot of accounts of the bullying that they had to endure, which was, someone talked about how they had a cup of fecal matter thrown at them, or that they were confronted by a group of students and were sprayed with ketchup while being called homophobic slurs. Claybolt had told his mother that it was the worst day of his life. And according to Brooks, he stated quote, "That happened while teachers watched. They couldn't fight back. They wore the ketchup all day and went home covered with it." Another incident of Claybolt being pelted with ketchup-covered tampons. Bullying was a big issue as well. It was prevalent in their journals that they were facing this kind of bullying and that they were angry about it. That definitely the school, the adults that they told him that had the power to stop this, and the teachers had failed these boys in that aspect. I'm not saying that is an excuse for what they did, because it's not an excuse. I was bullied growing up as well, and I didn't go and carry out a massacre. But there are definitely factors at play that pushed them to do this, but it's not an excuse for what they did at all. Absolutely not. They had also had prior run-ins to police. I think in 1998, I believe, they were arrested for stealing tools from a van. They were arrested from stealing tools from a van, and then they were put on a juvenile diversion program. Harris, in his journal, they had to write an apology to the owner, as well as do some other work, but Harris had wrote in his journal that he expressed, he wrote this apology, but in his journal, he basically said he should have the right to steal whatever he wants, and he's not sorry for it, so on and so forth. Kind of putting on a front, so people would think he was getting better, or being a good noodle, essentially. It's also believed that the medication that Harris was on at the time kind of exacerbated his aggressiveness. He had been going to therapy for quite some time with a psychologist, and he was prescribed Zoloft, But after complaining of feeling restless and unable to concentrate, he was switched to Luvox, which was a similar selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And the toxicology report after they had taken their own lives did come back that Harris had therapeutic amounts of this in his system as they were carrying out the massacre, whereas Claybold, on the other hand, didn't have anything in his system. Like I said, there is a ton of information about this case. Like, it's one of the most well-documented massacres in the United States history. There's a ton of information out there. There's a ton of stuff you can look up and you can read. I couldn't possibly get to it all, obviously. I just covered what I felt like was important to add to the story. At the end of it all, the individuals who tragically lost their lives in this massacre are as follows: Rachel Scott, Daniel Robo, William David Sanders, Kyle Velasquez, Stephen Kernow, Cassie Bernal, Isaiah Scholes, Matthew Ketchter, Lauren Townsend, John Tomlin, Kelly Fleming, Daniel Mauser, Corey DePuter, and Corey DePuter. I feel as though we should give those individuals the respect they deserve and have their names said after losing their lives in such a tragic way. But that is the Columbine Massacre that took place in 1999. Again, there is so much information out there that you can research yourself and look up. That was 8 or around 9 pages of notes that we just powered through. So this is probably going to be the longest case that we have. But let's pick our true crime for next week. We will do a crime and cosmetics next week, I promise. This one was just so long, I wanted to make sure the case itself had my full undivided attention, so I could get this to you in a way that was not chaos. Alright, who in tarnation do we have here? I was actually going to bypass the murder pot to do this case, but it seems like we've drawn it, so crazy how that works. I actually also, so we are going to be covering The Poet next week. That's actually one of my favorite cases to read about. I learned about it a while back, and it's super interesting. So I would recommend to not research anything on it beforehand, because it is a damn near movie twist at the end. But that's what we're going to be covering next week. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out. We will do another crime and cosmetics, like I said. I, again, just wanted this case to have my full undivided attention. If you don't already follow me on my other social medias, you can join our coven. It's our Discord server. I'll put that link in the description of this video. It is where we socialize. It's an absolute shit show. We get together, play video games with each other. I stream on Twitch just about every day. First-person shooters, puzzle games, horror games are my favorite. I will leave the description to the link to my other social medias in the description of this video. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for your support. It means the absolute world to me. I will see you guys next week. I hope you have the best day ever, and I hope all the good things happen to you. Be kind to others. Most of all, be kind to yourself. If you need help, please, 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 please reach out to somebody. You know, I very much appreciate the community I've built, because we try to lift each other up as much as we can. You know, someone is there for you. Someone will always be there for you, and this world will not be the world it is without you in it. And that I am so proud of you for waking up another day, pulling yourself out of bed and doing the damn thing. Even if you didn't do anything productive today, just waking up and powering through the day is enough of something to be proud of. I will see you guys next week. Love you so much. Bye-bye.